Alright, so in this video I'm gonna tell you why I think you should at least try and use your prime lens for your landscape and woodland photography. So a couple of weeks ago I got up early on a Saturday morning to go out for some woodland photography, as I am kind of a weekend photographer because during the week I have to work 9 to 5, so I always have to hope for the best conditions on the weekend. The best weather for me is when you have very thick fog that's just wrapping around the trees, because I think it can add quite a lot of mystery to your photographs. What I also really like is when it's almost overcast, but you have still like some sun rays peeking through the sky, through the clouds. I think that can also add a lot to your pictures. Unfortunately, you can't always have these conditions, and I find more often than not you don't. I still enjoy getting out every weekend to practice and work on my photography, and also just going out early in the morning, wandering the woods and finding interesting compositions to shoot. Sometimes it's just not that easy to properly decide on all your settings, especially if you're using a zoom lens. So what I did a couple of weeks ago, I took my 23mm f2 prime lens and put it on my Fujifilm X-T4 camera body, and that way I had one less thing to think about when composing a shot, contemplating how am I gonna shoot a certain subject. With zoom lenses, people say you often tend to either shoot fully wide open or fully extended, meaning with my Fujifilm 16-80 f4 zoom lens, you would either shoot 16mm or 80mm. I find that is not so much the case with me, but oftentimes I just have the problem that I don't try enough focal lengths with my zoom lens. Quite frequently, I just use the focal length I need to fit my composition from the position I'm standing at. May that be 60mm on one end or 80mm on the other end, or really anything in between. Unfortunately, I find that just staying at the position you're standing at and using your zoom lens to move to fit your composition doesn't really give you the best image. So zoom lenses kind of make me a lazy photographer, and in contrast, when I'm using prime lens, I tend to move way more, and that's not only to find a position where my focal length fits the composition I want to shoot, but also to find the best composition there is. So all in all, I feel like using a prime lens is just a good exercise to get in, to practice moving your feet to find the best composition there is, whatever focal length you may use. And I feel like getting into that rhythm gets you to do that with a zoom lens as well. I think using a prime lens can be quite a freeing experience because you don't have to choose a focal length, you only have one. And I feel like oftentimes when you're using a zoom lens, you kind of have like a choice paralysis because there are just so many options to choose from. So another benefit of using a prime lens for your landscape and woodland photography is that they tend to be very light lenses, or actually lighter than zoom lenses, and therefore I rarely actually put my camera with the lens back into the back, so I just carry it all the time when out. And sometimes when I'm using a zoom lens, and the zoom lens with my camera is obviously in my backpack, I go by certain scenes and I'm just thinking, doesn't really make sense to stop for that, take the backpack off and shoot it. But if I just have the prime lens out on my camera, I can basically just snap a picture and see if it's worthwhile finding a composition for that subject. Now to my last point, and I'm actually not 100% certain if it's true or not, but I have a strong feeling that it might be. And that's when you're outside and it's raining. When I'm using a prime lens, I'm way more confident in my lens's weather sealing, and that really only has to do with the build of the lens, because both of the zoom lenses I own have an extending tube and the prime lens obviously doesn't, and it just seems way more capable to keep water and in general moisture out of the lens. Probably the biggest problem people have with shooting with a prime lens is that it can be kind of restrictive. For example, you're up in the mountains and you want to shoot a scene a certain way, but you can't because you're stood right on a cliff and you obviously can't move over because you just fall off. Or something simple, you're around like a private field and there's fencing around it and you just can't move through that or climb over it, and you can't shoot the scene the way you want to shoot the scene because you can't move your feet further. In those scenarios, zoom lenses can actually be quite convenient. One more problem that came to mind when using prime lenses instead of zoom lenses is that let's say you want to buy 3 prime lenses to cover the range of 1 zoom lens. You are usually paying way more money for those 3 prime lenses instead of just getting that 1 zoom lens. Another problem is that when you're carrying 3 prime lenses instead of 1 zoom lens, they're usually way heavier, even though they may be a little smaller, but you're carrying 3 lenses. I find though the second point is not really a big problem with the Fujifilm X system, because a lot of the prime lenses of the Fujifilm X system are very light and compact actually. All of this obviously doesn't mean that you should never use your zoom lenses again and only concentrate on your prime lenses, but it's rather a training exercise to get you into the habit of using your feet to zoom and for you to learn what focal length works for what composition, and basically just knowing what to incorporate into your picture when using a zoom lens. I also don't think it's necessary to buy a prime lens solely for that purpose. You can always just use your zoom lens and set it to a certain focal length and basically just use the lens at that focal length for, let's say, 1 trip. Obviously you gotta have the willpower of not zooming, even though sometimes it might just seem easier. So when I went out a couple of weeks ago with only my prime lens and no other lenses, I got some pictures that I liked, even though I know they won't be my favorites. They're not images I'm gonna post to my Instagram, and they're also not images that I'm gonna print. But I knew that it was just useful to get out and just get the practice in, to practice what position works with the focal length I'm using. And I can definitely say I highly recommend doing that if you have never tried it. And it's probably something that I'm gonna do like once a month or so. Because in that situation a couple of weeks ago, when I went out, I had really bad weather. It wasn't that it was raining, it was just very boring weather. No fog whatsoever, the trees are all kind of dead because it's winter, it's very barren. But I still got images that I liked, and I enjoyed being outside taking pictures. So that's it from me for today. I hope that you liked this quick advice video, basically. I know in the last weeks I have done a lot of gear related videos, not specifically gear reviews, but very gear related. And I think in the future I'll keep doing those. I'll keep doing these quick advice tip videos, and I'll also do on location videos again. Anyway, I upload every other Friday, so if you don't want to miss the next video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give me a subscribe, and I'd also really appreciate it if you like this video, if you'd give me a thumbs up, because it really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. If you've ever tried doing landscape and woodland photography with only a prime lens, let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you've never tried it, you should definitely, and yeah, tell me your experience if it was the first time for you doing that. After this video, if I got you to do it, that would be great. Yeah, or maybe it's like second nature to you to only use prime lenses. Anyway, have a good day.